Hello and welcome to the Crypto Masters podcast, helping the general public to master an understanding of crypto assets. My name is Brian McCoy.
My name is Ross Eaton.
And we are the
Crypto
Masters.
That was pretty good.
Not bad. All right, let's get started with today's episode. The topic is Monero. It's a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Litecoin, but it's focused on privacy. And as a reminder, our goal is to provide information about crypto assets to help the public make investment decisions in the crypto space. We don't try to predict short-term price movements, so this show is not for short-term traders.
We provide information for different crypto assets to allow you, the listener, to make your own investment decision. This is not financial advice.
No, it is information you can use as part of your research. So today we'll be discussing the first privacy coin that we've discussed on the podcast. And it's the largest privacy coin by market cap. It's called Monero.
Yeah, and there's a lot of privacy coins out there. Maybe we'll do a couple more, but this is definitely the one. If we're going to do privacy coins, we have to talk about Monero. It's the largest one out there. So yeah, we'll see if you want to, make that decision to pull the trigger on Monero. So yeah, let's dive right in.
Let's do it. So some of the listeners may be wondering, why do we need privacy coin? Why is there privacy coin? Isn't Bitcoin private? Sort of a common misperception. As we've talked about many times, Bitcoin has the blockchain is public. You as an individual are not identified, but there's a public address that you use for the Bitcoin transactions, and all the information regarding the transactions other than your name are on there for the public to see. When it happened, who the recipient, or not who, but the number of the recipient, public address. It's all public information. So they say that Bitcoin is pseudonymous and not anonymous. And the way that works, at a very basic level is if someone's really knows what they're doing, is trying to figure out, who you are on Bitcoin, they probably can do it unless you're very careful about it and have a lot of knowledge. Ross, for us, when we buy any crypto assets here in the United States, at least speaking for me, I don't use a VPN or anything. I have to do the KYC that the exchanges I trade on have to do the KYC, the know your customer. So they got my name, they got my driver's license,
Yeah.
They know who I am.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to pull off any secret transactions on Bitcoin. It would take any, law enforcement, about 30 seconds to figure out who I am. But it's not just that. It's on the Bitcoin network, if you're not careful, they can sort of see all the amounts of transactions, and there's a lot of amounts of transactions going to the same particular private key number or identity. Some bad characters might want to try to figure out who that is and try to figure out how to hack them or something like that. So it's not just trying to avoid detection from law enforcement or anything like that. There's other reasons that you would have it, but I guess the basic answer to my initial question was no, you don't really get privacy by just using Bitcoin, and these other ones like Monero take extra steps to get you the privacy, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it a little bit, but you could just analyze transactions based on someone's public key. So if I had a guess of your public key, Brian, or let's say mine, for a better example, I think I spend a little more money on frivolous things, But you could guess with my public key, like, wow, Ross keeps sending, you know, Bitcoin to this one address, which I know is a golf outlet, or let's say for example, so I can somewhat put together Ross's transactions if I'm trying to build or investigate that. Since that public key, it never changes in Bitcoin's blockchain. So yeah, privacy in a economic sense, I think I've got to mention, libertarianism. Not to get too political here, but I mean, if you're a liberal, Monero might be right up your alley. If one concept of libertarianism is, you don't want Big Brother watching, you don't want someone, all up in your business. So Monero is right there. I mean, you cannot, as I'll get into later, you cannot trace someone's, wallet or transactions. I mean, it is really private.
Yeah, and I'm going to comment on that, and then we'll sort of jump into the way they do it at a fairly basic level. But no, I agree as well. I think a lot of people think privacy coins, and they immediately think, some nefarious conduct, like you must be doing something illegal or something. But it's not really that. It's more of a philosophy, or like you said, a libertarianism. We don't want government running our lives, in our lives, knowing everything we do, kind of thing. So I mean, there's a principle behind it, and actually, from the research on this, we talked about it. It seems to me that the operators behind Monero really seem to share that principle. It's nothing at all to do with allowing money laundering or something like that. It's just a basic human right to privacy, and so this is just extending that. So anyways, let's talk about how they achieve it. So we talked about Bitcoin. That's probably normally what we're going to use to contrast Monero with. But in Monero, if you send to a Monero public address, it really just goes to a randomly created one-time destination address. So Monero uses what they call stealth addresses. So every time you're doing it, it's just being generated. One's being generated. It's random. It's not traceable. It's both on the receiving end and the sending side. Uses these random stealth addresses. So unlike what we talked about on Bitcoin, the transactions that you see on the Monero blockchain won't give you any indication of who the sender or receiver is. So Ross, that's just part of it. The stealth addresses is one aspect of what they do. They also do something called the ring. Tell us about the ring protocol.
Yeah. And when I first heard about Monero, I mean, the first thing I heard of was the stealth addresses. And to my surprise, that was not the only thing they do to protect your privacy.
Yeah, it does seem like, oh, that's good, that's enough, that would do it, but that's not really.
This is why I did not create any sort of blockchain technology, because I would have, like, in terms of privacy, I would have stopped there. I mean,
good.
On the
got it covered.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, stealth addresses, okay, fine. But Monero takes it a couple steps further, and they do that with what we call ring signatures, which is pretty interesting. Just to give an example, so let's say Alice, wants to send currency to Bob. What she's going to do is first authorize that transaction. So looking back on it, Bob sees, Allison's signature on that transaction, her, public key, which would be in Bitcoin. In Monero, you have the stealth key. So it's a one-time public key. So you've got that first layer we already talked about. So in the ring signature, it gets a little crazier. You have not just one Allison signature on it, or a public key. You have a select number of public keys or signatures on one transaction. So it could be Alice and then 5 or so decoys along on that transaction. So looking back from Bob's perspective, he just sees 5 or 6 or whatever signatures on that transaction. So he's really not sure who it comes from, especially knowing that it's a one-time public key, a one-time signature. So anyone looking back on this transaction knows it came from one of these 5 or 6, whatever signatures or public keys. But again, it's one time. So that's kind of the extra layer and, a definition of ring signatures, if you will.
Yeah, they just kind of throw in multiple ones, like you said, 5 or 6. I don't know what the number is. Maybe that's it. And then it just could be any one of those, and no one has any way to know which one of those that it was. Now, I do think the receiver, for example, if Bob needed to verify this came from Alice, he gets a way to do that. But for the rest of the world, I guess, they could never know who sent that. It could have been any one of these.
Yeah, and you can even choose, which is interesting to me, interesting concept. You can choose your ring signature number. Say you want a very secure transaction, you can really crank it up there. With the latest Monero update, I forgot what the minimum is, but they capped it. Like you can just do one. Like they want to kind of keep that privacy aspect of their blockchain, so they did crank it up there a little bit to get a minimum number of signatures to at least enforce that on their whole blockchain.
Yeah. So that's the two things we just talked about are the stealth addresses and then the ring signatures. That seems to thoroughly protect the identities of the persons, but then it sort of goes even a step further with the ring confidential transactions. What's that all about?
Yeah. So you could, in a way, call that transaction mixing, which you also, throw all these transactions pretty much in a pool. This pool mixes it up, jumbles it up, and sends out basically currency to the other end, the outputs. And that mixing keeps track of that all in one. So it just keeps going layers and layers deep of, how this becomes, anonymous, private. I mean, it's just crazy.
So unlike what we talked about on Bitcoin, where you could see there was this huge transaction, this $1 million transaction from this public address to this public address. In Monero, you can't see the amount. All right. I mean, I think the effect of the ring confidential transactions is it hides the amount, or it disguises the amount. So you can't rely on that being the amount. It's not the amount shown is not the correct amount. Unlike on the Bitcoin blockchain, you can see, wow, this was a huge transaction. In Monero, all you know is a transaction and some money. You don't know the amount. So it hides the amount too, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah. I'm thinking I jumped ahead a little bit on you there, Brian, but no, I mean, you cannot see the amount too. I mean, it's just trying to trace this back would just be just a headache, a major headache,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine trying to do it, but.
All right, let's get into some of the normal background information that we talk about. The Monero, we'll call it Monero, was a fork back in April of 2014. A fork of a different coin called Bytecoin, B-Y-T-E coin. And I looked it up. It still exists. It's like number 250 market cap or something.
Sweet.
But I think one of the reasons that there was a fork is there was some sketchy practices at the launch of Bytecoin with self-dealing of the people involved and things like that. So it got off to a bad start. So Monero just forked. At first it was called BitMonero, interesting trivia, and then they just dropped it and made it Monero. As you probably know, its currency is XMR. If you see it on the exchanges, it's XMR. And it is traded on a lot of the exchanges. It's a very easy currency to buy and find. You can buy all the big ones, even for us in the United States. It's easy to buy. I think Coinbase, eToro, Kraken, I think they all have it. Interesting here, Ross. You and I, we always talk about the maximum supply, and one of the reasons we like Bitcoin is its maximum supply. There's not one for Monero. In fact, they have an amount that is, in a sense, the amount for the miners will be gone in 2022, but after that, they're just going to have an ongoing 0.6, so a little more than a half of an XMR for each block after that in 2022. So it's a way to keep the miners going. I've always wondered about, Bitcoin, even though, it's not going to run out until 2135 or something like that. There's going to be all these halvings between now and then, but way before then, when, after more halvings, it gets down to one or less. But then again, what the price is going to be. But anyway, I guess my thing is, I've always wondered what happens when Bitcoin runs out. Nobody's going to mine it. What happens to the, the protection and the decentralization? And I guess what I've heard is, Bitcoin miner, but at that point they can get by on the transaction fees or something. But
yeah, it's still interesting to think about, though. It's
well, and for something that's not Bitcoin, the monster, like it's not a bad solution, even though it goes against our supply scarcity when it runs out. It does give them a way to keep their decentralization going.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that it's easy to get. It's on a lot of exchanges now. I will say that some exchanges have already started to drop it because regulators are pressuring them about privacy coins. We'll talk some more about that. And this is just more my thing and doing the research for Monero. It seems that they are the not really a team, but the group, the volunteers behind it. I don't know, they're all volunteers, but they're constantly sort of upgrading, advancing their cryptology. It's sort of impressive that they keep making this thing as private as they can, and then they keep making changes to the mining so that it can be mined by more people and not just the big groups like we see with Bitcoin. So Ross, I'm going to let you get into the mining aspect for Monero.
Oh yeah, so this is a very exciting concept for me for Monero. But I don't know if you've heard of random X. So the concept here is basically, Monero uses a proof of work algorithm like Bitcoin.
As miners.
For miners. And it's designed to be ASCII resistant. Those crazy expensive mining rigs that you can barely get if you're just a regular average Joe out there. Crazy powerful. I mean, you talk about Bitcoin being decentralized, but only people with tons of money are going to be mining Bitcoin. So, Bitcoin, it started off being, this decentralized, it's for everyone. Everyone can jump in and mine. Not always the case. So with Monero and Random X, any person can really mine on the blockchain. They have a fast mode, which requires, at least 2 gigabytes of RAM to be able to mine on their blockchain. I don't know what you have on your machine at home, Brian, but I've got 8 or 16. I think I've got 16. So I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
But they have also a light mode, which allows you to mine on their blockchain. And I have to keep rereading this to make sure it's true. But just 256 megabytes of RAM.
Wow.
I haven't bought a laptop in 10 years with under 8 gigs of RAM.
Right.
Anyone can mine on this blockchain, which is amazing.
And the thing that's impressive there is that we don't want to become, everybody having the ASCII rigs in the warehouses. That's not who we want mining ours, because that leads to, consolidation. So I think, Ross, tell me, I think the random X algorithm means that the ASCII rigs just don't even really work. You can't even use those.
Oh
Or
yeah.
they're even less effective, I think, than a GPU or CPU.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like what I've heard is it's actually more optimal to have a CPU
Yeah.
on the Monero blockchain. I mean, I've got that now on my MacBook, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So
I got to say that is cool. I like that,
and again, if I can just go off for a second, you'll hear people say, "Oh, I'm mining Bitcoin. I've got a GPU setup or whatever. I'm mining Bitcoin, or something else, Litecoin or whatever." But they're not a full node on Bitcoin. I mean, anyone that tells you they're mining Bitcoin is most likely a part of a huge pool online. You jump into a pool.
Yeah.
There's a pool manager that just supposedly gives you your credit for contributing to the pool.
If you're trying to mine on Bitcoin, not being in a pool with a CPU or even a GPU these days, I think you have a better chance of getting hit by lightning than you do of, winning the block reward.
Yeah, you better. I mean, that person that's telling you this, that they're mining Bitcoin, is definitely in a pool, or they better have some mega huge warehouse full of ASCIIs mining Bitcoin 24/7.
Right.
So yeah, the concept of being a full node is just amazing, especially for a coin that's this high up on market cap.
I'm sort of in a way, I've had envy of the people who got in early on in Bitcoin and could mine it from the early days, because I got in beyond that. I got in after the ASCII rigs were set up and could never mine on it. I mean, that would have been fun. So, there's other options, not just Monero. There's other coins that you can do that with, but Monero is a pretty big one and a pretty cool one. I mean, I'd be interested in maybe trying to mine it. But anyway, that's their mining, their proof of work system. I like it.
Yeah, it gets back to I think the core kind of
Yeah.
spirit of crypto and blockchain in general. That's why a lot of people got into it, is for decentralization. So
Right.
that's a major point.
And for them to not say, oh well, they've outsmarted us. The ASCII rigs are winning everything now. Too bad. They didn't do that. They changed. They changed their protocol to this random X. They did have a crypto night. I think that's what it was called before the change to random X. And that was designed to do the same thing, but people started getting around it. So hey, they upgraded again, and it's just it's impressive. So I give them kudos to that. And speaking of that, we talk about the team behind the projects all the time. And for Monero, some of the members are anonymous. There is one big name in crypto who's associated with this project that a lot of people will know the name, especially if you're on Twitter. And that is Ricard Spagni, better known as Fluffy Pony.
Yes.
He's, like I said, active on Twitter. You see him quoted in a lot of crypto news stories, things like that. So he's sort of the face and the voice behind the team.
Fluffy Pony, not a gangster.
No, he is one. He has his thoughts and beliefs and positions, and he states them, and I have some admiration for that. What else? On the other privacy coins, Ross, we haven't talked about any others, but I know Zcash is a big name that you hear a lot in privacy. What are some of the other competitors of Monero?
Yeah, Zcash is definitely a big one. Dash.
Dash is up there.
And I always say it wrong. Komodo.
I think it's Komodo.
There's Grin.
Grin. I think Grin uses the Mimblewimble, which maybe we'll talk about that. It's another, method of achieving privacy.
Yeah. I don't know. There's just I haven't been too focused on them honestly because Monero is just so far up there compared to these guys
Yeah,
in my mind. Um,
right.
but
Yeah. Here's an interest, not maybe not that interesting, but here's a story about Monero. When I first got into crypto investing, I had a very small list of coins that I was interested in, and Monero was on that list. I mean, it was one of the top three that I was considering buying at first, and I got to say, I never did. What you want to just swing into final thoughts?
sure.
All right,
Yeah.
let's swing into final thoughts. It'll follow here from my story. I never did buy Monero. We've talked about some of the other ones that I've bought instead. And the reasons I'd say I haven't done that is, and this gets to my final thoughts. My concern on privacy coins, and especially one as good as Monero, is that this is the thing that the regulators are most worried about. I think now, I mean, who knows? The regulators could crack down on Bitcoin as well, but I don't think they're as worried about Bitcoin for the reasons we talked about here, but they're worried about the privacy coins because if you were going to engage in illegal conduct, Monero and the privacy coins are a way to do that. And that's not their fault. I'm not faulting them at all. Someone is abusing or misusing their asset. But it is a fact that regulators are looking at this, I believe. Some exchanges have already dropped it for that reason. You see stories in the crypto media that Monero is used by ISIS, Monero is used by drug dealers. Some hack recently, part of its hack it would take over the computer and mine for Monero. It gives it a bad name, but I want to say it doesn't deserve the bad name. I truly believe the people behind Monero are doing it for the things we talked about, which is privacy is a basic human right. And we don't need the government knowing every transaction that we engage in. That's just none of their business. And I'm a big believer in that. So I support them intellectually, but I'm not invested in it. I might invest some in it just on principle, or I might donate to them just on principle because I agree with their principle. But as an investor, I'm concerned about what regulators could do that would affect the price of the Monero asset. So those are my final thoughts, Ross.
Yep. Yeah. I'm a slight piggyback off you. I mean, the underlying technology here is great. I love it. It's got the spirit of cryptocurrency with decentralization, if you will.
Yeah.
It's very much, I don't want Big Brother watching what I do. And this is the coin for you. Now, to give it some knocks with the like transaction mixers, I think that's an area that you have to consider because using a transaction mixer, and again, I mentioned it briefly, you can kind of send your transactions there and it kind of basically scrambles your public key so it doesn't know where you're sending your money. It just, on the outside looking in. On the blockchain, you just know that you sent your money to a mixer. Using that software there, I mean, you can use Bitcoin for a malicious transaction, or you can, if you really want to be anonymous, you could use it there. So I love it's going to come with a fee, obviously. So I love the underlying technology of Monero. I think I will invest in it just from our research. I will have some money there because I love the team behind it. But to give it some knocks, you can use a transaction mixer if you want to be private with your money, or, if there's people out there that want to be malicious. But I will say, from the regulator perspective, this thing has a ton of momentum. If you want to be a miner, like anyone can, with the, especially with the light mode of the 256 megabyte limit of RAM or requirement of RAM. So this, although there's going to be regulation, if there is regulation, it's going to hit Monero hard. Because, once you got in blockchain, Brian, I know you must have heard, oh, Monero's the evil one out there. It's doing all the, hiding of the transactions.
Yeah. And I will say, Ross, to add to that, and I know you feel the same way, I know the regulators aren't going to stop Monero. These people are going to keep going, but the regulators can affect and will affect the price of the coin. And, that's sort of what we're focused on. So anyway, sounds like we're on the same page here. I'm probably not going to invest in it myself, except for more of a donation or kind of a support kind of thing, but sounds like you might. So a little bit of a mixed result on Monero. All right, you know what, Ross? We'll be back next week with our next episode to talk about another crypto asset.
That's right. Stay tuned. Leave us some comments. How are we doing? Give us some feedback. Are we terrible? Let us know. Is there a coin you want us to review? Let us know. We'll do that coin.
Yeah, stay tuned. We really mean that. We have our own coins we want to talk about, but if we get feedback that wants us to focus on another coin, we will definitely consider that, and we certainly eventually will get to it. Because you know what? We're eventually going to get to all of them.
All of them, yes.
If we live long enough.
Yes. If we had an infinite number of time, we could get to every coin.
That's right. All right. This has been another podcast from the Crypto Masters. Check us out next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.